Welcome to the latest episode of the N1 Fitness Podcast. So I've had quite a few requests from you guys asking about getting some clients on to chat about their experience working with me, what they found difficult, what they found easy, and everything in between. So I'm super excited to welcome our special guest, Jenn Kaminski. Welcome, Jenn.
Thank you.
So before we delve into the details, I just wanted to give you guys a quick breakdown of how the nutritional coaching process works. So you guys have context for what Jenn and I are going to be talking about today. So basically it starts with a comprehensive questionnaire that I get clients to fill out to begin with. And we touch on things like, what are your goals now? How are you eating on a typical basis? What are your movement habits like? Sleep, digestive health, stress levels, what sort of foods you like versus don't, what sort of role alcohol plays in your life, your libido, your eating schedule and structure, how you like to put that together, menstrual cycle impacts for women, why someone even wants to work with me to begin with, like what's your why, considering yourself more of a moderation person or all or nothing, and then finally, like what city you live in, so then we can sort of, all of nutritional coaching is done online via email and text. So how we can manage that and stay in contact the best way possible. So you get the picture. Like it's a pretty detailed process to begin with the intro questionnaire, because I want to get a good idea of where someone's at and where they want to go. And then once they fill that out, they send that back along with 4 photos. So a front shot, a right side, left side, back shot in swim trunks for men, and then a bikini, sports bra, or sports bottoms for women. And then I have people send these photos because, in my opinion, it's irresponsible of me to put a nutritional program together without having all this info. So I need to see what's visually going on in order to coach someone to the best of my ability, and cookie cutter meal plans just aren't my jam. So then I put together a nutritional program, send it their way, and then every week I send another set of questions based on how the week went. So this is a shorter set of questions than the initial questionnaire, but I still want to get an accurate idea of how the week went, in all. And then they fill out those questions, send along another 4 photos that are updated from that week, and then we see how they've progressed. So programs are anywhere from 12, 20, 30 weeks. Some people work with me for years, just depending on where they're starting and what their goals are. But Jenn and I have been working together nutrition-wise for about 8 months. She gets the odd personal training session in here and there. She's down basically 50 pounds, which is amazing. She's killing it. So first off, Jenn, you heard of me through a friend of yours who had worked with me before, but what sort of sparked you to reach out to begin with?
So Amber is a friend of mine who worked with you before, and at the time I was interested in finding someone to help coach me through weight loss. And when I inquired, at the time of me inquiring with her, I thought I was ready, and I did remember emailing you at one point, and you did get back to me, and then I was like, I'm not ready yet. And then it was a year later, it was about last March, and I was at my friend's son's first birthday party, and a friend of ours took a picture of me holding him, and she's like, oh my goodness, that's the cutest photo. And she showed me, and I kind of looked at it and was kind of like, that's not me. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, that's not me. She's like, it's you. And I was like, no, but I'm like, when I look in the mirror, that is not what I see. Like, who is that? And it kind of just, I don't know, it kind of threw me for a little bit of a loop, kind of just like, how did this happen? How did I get like this? And it was just different in a way that I was like, okay, you know what? No, like I'm 33 at the time, or I would have been 34. So, I was like, I'm 34. I gotta like get into shape. I don't want to be, getting older and acting like I'm much older than what I actually am. And just needed to get back to basically the person that I thought I saw in the mirror versus the person that I just saw in a picture. And there's other pictures too that people send me that go, this is why I walked by you, because you don't even look the same. And it's cool to see that. But yeah, it was basically that photo in March that sparked me to be like, no, it's time to do something. So then that's when I contacted you again, and then was like, yeah. And I believe I emailed you, and the next day we started.
Yeah, it was super quick. Like once you decided, you decided. But that's super powerful, and that's really cool, because sometimes it can just happen in an instant where you look at a photo and you're like, holy shit, do I look like that? Like, is that where I'm at right now? Because it can just sort of, life can get in the way, and then all of a sudden you're in a completely different place than you necessarily think you are.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely like, that was like the shocker that I needed. And it has happened before in the past, and I have lost weight on my own, but it was getting to the point where it was like I needed somebody to coach me, because it wasn't just about weight loss, but it was about a lifestyle change. So I needed to learn how to change my lifestyle so that I could better myself through the rest of my life, rather than just the right now to get the weight off. So
Right. So what was it like filling out the initial questionnaire and then sending 4 pics in a bikini to some dude that you'd never met over the interwebs? Like, what was that like?
Well, when I first got the initial questionnaire, I was like, holy crap, this is a lot of questions. And I was on set, and my assistant and I were going through the questions, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to answer these. Like, I don't know. Like, this is like, I've never thought about this stuff. And she's like, just read them over again and just, answer them. And so we read them, and I literally sat at work and filled it out. And, and then I believe I had messaged you and just said, like, I can't take the pictures right now, but I'll get those to you tomorrow. At the time, I didn't have a bikini. I remember that. I had never in my life owned one, to be honest with you. Always covered myself up since I was a kid. But yeah, I ended up, just after Mexico, a friend of mine gave me a bikini. And so when I first sent those first pictures, kind of what I thought I saw was, oh, yeah, okay, I'm overweight. Yeah, I need to do something, but it wasn't too bad. And then when I put the bikini on, and I believe we did the bikini photos, I think I had lost about 20 pounds at that point, maybe, or something around there, and put the bikini on, and I was like, oh, it was super uncomfortable, but it was good, because I had to get out of that box of being like, no, I can't wear this. It's like, no, I can wear this. I just have to get fit in order to look the way I want to in this. So those bikini photos were different to take, but it was definitely worth it, because I saw way more progress in those photos than the original outfit that I was wearing. But it was different. Like, oh, I have to send these photos to a dude who I've never met before. All right, that's cool.
That is one of the sort of the toughest parts for people initially. They're just like, the questionnaire, it's detailed or whatever, they can fill that out. But then, actually taking the pictures and seeing, sort of some raw, it's really raw, right? You're seeing where you're at, where you are, right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was like, oh my God, like, this person's going to judge me. But I'm like, no, he's not going to judge me, because he's here to help me. And the only way he can help me is by seeing what we need to do. So I had to get the whole, judging and that kind of thing out of my head, to know that what I'm doing is supposed to be helping. So yeah, as soon as got that out, it was good.
Right. Yeah. Cool. So what was it like getting your initial program when I sent you the email, I'm like, here's your nutrition program. Here's the breakdown meal by meal. Were you excited? Were you overwhelmed? Like, what was it like starting initially?
It was good. I mean, everything you sent was pretty straightforward and detailed, and the breakdown of the program itself was helpful, because you had sent me like 2 separate documents. So one of like basic, like how to follow it, and then everything you need to do. But reading the actual, like, what I need to eat and how I need to measure everything was like, what? I have to do this? Like, this is so much work. Can't the guy just tell me what I need to eat? Like, oh, and I was like, great. And then, at first I kind of thought like, okay, so I can have chicken, I can have these foods. And I'm like, and we've talked about this before, and I'm like, this is like jail food. Like, I'm eating the blandest stuff known to man. I'm like, how am I supposed, like, this is going to get so boring so fast. but that was my mentality, because that was my mentality with regards to my life in general. Just eating on a regular basis and, not knowing what a whole food was versus, processed foods. You kind of have an idea of what processed foods are, but to understand what a whole food is and what a nutritional food aspect is and how to make a meal out of those things definitely took some learning. Pinterest is really great for that kind of stuff. And so it was overwhelming at first, but I think I've got a handle on it now. Yeah. But it was good. It was good in the way that you laid it all out. There was no questions, and having you there to ask questions when I needed to know certain things was very helpful. So, that's really good too.
Right. Yeah. And so what Jenn's referring to is I don't list out, breakfast is not 3 eggs with a piece of fruit and some oatmeal every morning. It is like you have a bunch of protein options, you have a bunch of starchy carbs, bunch of fruit, and bunch of fat options, and you can piece together a meal however you'd like. The portion, the exact amount is listed there, but it's not the same every day. So there's a lot more variety, but it's not just like, hey, eat this meal 1, eat this meal 2, eat this meal 3, because I just don't think that that's sustainable long term, because what happens if you want to switch out your breakfast foods and things like that. So that's what Jenn's referring to, where it's like, oh man, I actually have to learn about, what composes a meal. Like I need to put these things together and experiment and find out, sort of what I like from this menu of whole foods, not, store-bought sort of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And knowing too that you can't mix your pasta sauce with your meat, because you got to measure that all out.
Right.
I did that a couple of times at the beginning, where I was like, so just curious, how do I measure my meat sauce with my spaghetti squash when the meat's in the sauce? And learning that I had to cook the meat separately, cooking the veggies separately and everything separately, and then adding it together in a container for like a meal prep container.
Right. Yeah. If you're not adding like a specific portion to begin with to the meat, like say 4 portions, and then you just divide it into quarters, you do need to do it separately like that. So yeah, it does. I mean, let's be honest, it takes more time than just like a kind of haphazard way of eating. And that's why this is so difficult.
Yeah. Especially when you don't have a dishwasher and you're using a million dishes.
That's just a whole nother level. Like that is, oh my God, I don't know how you do it. So how did you implement this given your shift work schedule? So Jenn is in the movie industry. So how did you implement this lifestyle piece into sort of your funky, ever-changing schedule?
So basically in order to know that I was going to do this, and knowing that I had to do this and I didn't have a choice, because, I'm liable to you, and I have to maintain every week. I have to answer to you. So, it was kind of like, all right, you're going to have to do this. And I have meal prepped before. And in the film industry, we are given so much food. Like it's just laid out for us. And, we have a craft service table that has anything from fruits and vegetables to chips to chocolates to nuts to anything you could possibly dream about that is in a store is on inside this tent, that you can just go in and out and help yourself as much as you want, as many times as you want throughout the entirety of your day. And on an average day, I can work anywhere from 14 to 16 hours, sometimes more, depending. And, when you get tired and you're not thinking about things, you just start to go, you're like, okay, I'm tired. What can I do? I'll have a piece of chocolate because I need that sugar rush to get me through the rest of the day. Or I'm just lazy and I don't want to cut up an apple and put some almond butter on a plate. I'm just going to grab this peanut butter cookie instead. So, changing that mentality. And then, I have worked shows where we've had amazing caterers and they cook really great meals. And I've had caterers that don't cook very good meals and use lots of oils and salts and sauces and spices, and it's a mouth overload. And you can feel bloated after. And then when you're having to work another 8 to 9 hours after lunch, it's hard when you're so lethargic and bloated. So I knew that if I was going to do this, I had to not basically eat at work. So what was basically given to me for free was something that I merely had to say, I can't eat this anymore. So I had to meal prep on Sundays. So what I would do is, I have 2 days off a week. So Sunday morning I would get up, I would go buy groceries. I would, Saturday night while I was at home, I would look on Pinterest for different recipes that were compliant with what my food regime is with you. And then also things that necessarily weren't compliant, but I actually adjusted them to suit what I needed to do. And basically Sunday morning would go and buy groceries and come home and just start cooking. And it took me about 4 hours to cook 5 meals for the week. So, and I started off with only cooking one meal. So I would just have I'd make a huge amount of one certain meal and have that twice in my day. And then after 2 weeks of doing that, I was like, this is getting gross. Like, I can't keep eating the same thing all day, every day for 5 days, because it's just, my palate's like, what are you doing to me? Like, let me taste some flavors. So I started thinking about how I can utilize one huge component, but then make 2 different meals for myself every day. So having one meal at lunch and then another meal at a certain time in the evening, and then not eating any time after that. And then just knowing that if I was going to eat at craft service, that I was only going to eat vegetables with no dip. And the vegetables were the only thing that I was allowed to eat. And if I needed a snack, it was an apple with a certain amount of almond butter or whatever, and then measuring it out. I would take my scale that I bought for home and bring it to work, and just got to do what you got to do. So yeah, it was just about meal prepping. And, people would be like, you want to do something Sunday? And I'm like, can't, I'm cooking. So it does, it consumes your entire day. But unfortunately, because I didn't want to come home after work and cook for the next day, I had to make sure that I meal prepped on Sundays for the entire week so that I never fell off track.
Right. And so initially, would you say that it took you a lot longer to meal prep and dial in your meals than it does now, or how has that process changed? I'm definitely quicker now. Cause I kind of figure out things that do take longer versus things that are easily done. But, if you're like me and you're not used to cooking all the time, and I just cook for myself, I don't cook for anybody else. It's, you've never done it before, and now you're doing it all the time. You have to get used to like, okay, how does a kitchen function? And, in my job, I've never had to cook. And realistically, on the weekends when I wasn't working, I was going to eat out because it's simpler that way. And, especially with eating at work, if I was buying groceries, they were going bad in my fridge because I wasn't eating them fast enough. So learning how to cook again in my kitchen and learning what foods were healthy and what whole foods were and what I needed to do. Now, being 8 months into the program, I think that it only took me about 2, almost 3 months to adjust to complete meal prep and getting quicker at it for sure. Yeah, that's huge. Because if people hear that it takes like an hour to make a meal, that's a lot. That's a lot, right? And if you're rediscovering cooking essentially, or like cooking for the first time, yeah, it's going to take you a bit. But once you get down, to the nitty gritty in the habit of things, then it's a lot faster, obviously.
Yeah.
So had you tried any other diets in the past? Like, did stuff work? What didn't work? Like, what was different about this than other things? Like, was it accountability? What was it?
In the past, I've tried things like the Wildrose Cleanse. I've done cleanses before. So I've done a Wildrose Cleanse and I've done a juice cleanse. And did either one of those work?
Those aren't maintainable? What?
Well, to be honest, like the Wildrose Cleanse I did about 5 years ago. And at the time I was living downtown. I am still living downtown Vancouver, but I was living downtown Vancouver and I was just graduated school at Vancouver Film School. And right around that time, same thing, saw a picture, was like, no, I got to do something. At the apartment that I lived in at the time, I lived on the 16th floor. So I was like, okay, you can do this. You can do the stairs. You do not need to take the elevator unless you're carrying like 500 pounds of groceries, then take the elevator. So what I would do is I would literally walk down 16 flights of stairs, probably 4 or 5 times a day, and walk back up 4 or 5 times a day. I would run 3 times a week. I'm a runner. I've always been a runner. I'm, a basketball player. And so I would just go running and then do the stairs after, as much as it sucked. But it felt good. And I love to sweat because, you always see those sayings like sweating is your fat crying.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're getting out, and it was good. And I did the Wildrose Cleanse at the same time, and it does have a meal thing that you can follow, and it tells you things that you can't eat and to avoid and that sort of thing. So I did all that, and I ended up losing 50 pounds on my own. But then once it was over, it was over. And I think what ended up happening there was, I was actually pretty good in staying on it. And what happened was I ended up getting sick. So I was sick for 4 days, and then I kind of fell off the routine. And with me, I had no one to be accountable to me or vice versa. So it was just me. So it was just kind of like, oh, whatever, like I'll be fine. And, I put on jeans and I'm like, oh, they're a little snug, but they still fit. It's all good. And I would kind of just sit there and be like, oh, these are okay, but not knowing that I was wearing yoga pants more often and sweatpants more often. And of course, you can expand those and you never really notice until it's too late. And so in the course of 5 years, I gained that 50 pounds back. And yeah, I wasn't being taught how to properly maintain something through a lifestyle change. It was always a diet. And I remember still to this day, someone said to me, you never want to diet because the first 3 letters in a diet is die. And it's like, they always die off. They never last. And so, I just found that having someone like you held me accountable to everything. I have to send in pictures to you every week. I have to answer questions every week. And it's like, oh, if I don't do this, Marcus is going to kill me. To have that like accountability to someone to be on top of, but also when I felt like I was falling off track or things weren't happening the way I wanted them to, having you to talk to and knowing that as a professional, you're talking to me and guiding me through now what the emotional aspect of this whole thing was. And that's what I didn't have before. So the emotions took over, and therefore I always fell back to my old habits. Right.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that's pretty crazy, right? You had lost 50 pounds, then you get sick, and 4 days was enough to get you off track enough to where you weren't really thinking about this stuff for like 5 years. It's really crazy. I mean, it just kind of speaks to, for some people, not all people, but some people really need accountability, like external accountability. And it really depends on the person, but whether it's, some people have a hard time working out on their own, but they have no problem signing up for a workout class, knowing that they need to be there by 9 a.m. and going to that. So it's just about knowing yourself and knowing what you need, and whether you can motivate yourself or you need to set up things in your environment that keep you accountable and keep you motivated. So yeah, everybody's kind of different on that angle.
Yeah.
So talking about the stairs and stuff, how about movement wise? How has that changed? Like since we started working together and stuff, it's something that you've obviously been a lot more aware of because we talk about it a lot, but how's your movement looking?
It's a lot better. So knowing that, on an average, I have to get 8,000 to 10,000 steps a day is, before I never actually thought about it. And in my job, we do sit a lot. So in between setups, when we're not applying makeup or whatever and whatnot on set, we're sitting in a chair. And I still remember sending you a picture with my finger down my leg saying, why does this muscle hurt? And you're like, because you sit too much. And I was like, sitting in the photo, and I'm like,
yeah. You had your feet like kicked up on like your makeup thing. Oh, it's so funny.
And I was like, oh crap, I just got caught. Like, damn it. And it's like, But at the same time, I'm like, okay, yeah, no, he's right. Like, yeah, okay, I'm sitting, like, I got to get up more. And so at work, I choose to stand more and I walk, and I'm more aware of, like, if I'm sitting too much on my couch or something, and I'm like, get up, and I'm like, oh, I'm so stiff. I'm like, oh, you can stop sitting so much, like get up and walk. Vancouver is a very rainy city, so it's hard sometimes to get out. But after I had moved back downtown, one morning I was like, I'm going to go for a run. It's not raining. And I made it about 45 minutes into my run on the seawall, and it kind of started spinning. And I was like, nah, I should probably turn around now. Like, I've been running for almost, 45 minutes. I should probably head back because I've got just as much time back as I've gone this far. And I was soaked when I got back. But despite being absolutely soaked, it was like, it's liberating, because it's like, I actually did this, and I did it in the rain, and the rain can't stop me from moving. And you just got to gear up properly and know that, obviously I was just in Edmonton and it was like minus 46. So I'm definitely not going to go for a run in minus 46 weather. Right. But doing other things like push-ups and sit-ups and other things that you had said, like, get a sweat on this way. It's just that little bit of movement that literally takes 20 minutes out of your day. So, I definitely find myself being more aware of needing to move rather than sitting. So,
well, that's cool, because it sounds like you're more in touch with your body, and your body is letting you know, it's communicating with you and letting you know that you need to move. It's like, ooh, I'm getting a little stiff here. Like, I need to get up and walk a little bit.
Yeah.
So how about sleep? Oh, actually, I just wanted to touch on, I've had quite a few clients in Edmonton, and a thing for them, because it's so cold this time of year, is that they drive to the mall and they walk around the mall.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a thing.
I've really noticed that.
Yeah. When I was living there, I used to see people all the time walking, and I was like, what are they doing? And just like serious, like power walking. And I'm like, actually, that's really smart.
Totally. It's like, where there's a will, there's a way kind of thing, right? Like, just making it happen. That's cool.
Yeah. So
how about sleep wise? Sleep is super, super important. And, obviously we talk about this one a lot too. How have you noticed your food, I guess, decisions or food motivation changing, whether you're sleeping adequately versus not?
So during our whole program, I've definitely have tested some areas of if this would affect my sleep. And, for the first couple of months adjusting to things, I was sleeping. In my job, it's really hard. Sometimes I barely get 6 hours of sleep, depending on what time I finish work and what time I have to be back at work. So at lunchtime, we generally take like a quick 15 to 20 minute siesta if we can. In the trailer, we eat and just kind of turn the lights off and just take a quick nap. And to be honest with you, doing that actually does help improve the rest of my work day. And it also helps me in not thinking mentally that I need sugar or something to keep me going for the rest of the day. So those little naps that we always resisted as a child, that we wish we were told we could go do now on a regular basis, they do help for sure. And I have definitely tried the theory of, if I eat this meal today, is it honestly going to make a difference in my sleep? And it does, because if I go to bed bloated or I haven't eaten something right, it does affect my sleep. I don't sleep as well as if I had eaten properly throughout the entire day. So, you do give us an option of a cheat meal. And now, before I was like, yes, cheat meal, I'm going to eat a cheeseburger. And then I'm like, oh God, I feel like crap. Like, what the hell was I thinking? And so now my cheat meals are different. They're a lot more thought out. So it's kind of like, well, this hasn't worked for me in the past. It's made me feel like crap. And when I ate it, I didn't sleep very well. So, yeah, it's about also kind of figuring that out. But I have noticed that I do sleep better when I'm eating better and when I'm moving more. In our training sessions, when I was able to do them once or twice a week, I definitely found that I was sleeping better. And then when I was getting out of bed, I wasn't so sore. I mean, granted what we did in our training sessions, but,
different kind of sore.
Yeah, different kind of sore.
Yeah.
But yeah, the sleep has definitely improved, and just being aware that, if I'm tired, I need to, go have a nap if I can.
Right. Yeah. It's pretty crazy because they've done a lot of studies on shift work and sleeping and stuff. I'm actually going to put a whole episode together on shift work and how people can manage it, because I have a lot of, just a really high percentage of my clients work shift work, like nurses, your industry, stuff like that. So people that sleep for less than 6 hours a night are 55% more likely to be overweight. That is insane. There's obviously some correlation there. So sleep is just so important on the way it impacts your brain. And that'll be a whole nother future episode of the podcast as well, just how sleep impacts eating behavior. But something that you've noticed just in your day-to-day. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So how about, when you initially came to me, you mentioned in your first questionnaire PCOS a few times. So have you noticed that the symptoms of that change at all, or have you been paying attention to that?
Oh yeah, no, I definitely pay attention all the time. We're not really sure when having, so PCOS, also polycystic ovarian syndrome, is when you have cysts growing on your ovaries, and it is a hereditary thing, but you can, in my, years of learning about it, it can cause weight gain if it's not managed properly. And a lot of people with PCOS do suffer from weight gain, more or less in the midsection area. It's a hormonal imbalance too, when you overproduce certain aspects of hormones in your body, and your body starts to produce, because your body produces natural sugars. And when you have PCOS, you end up producing much more natural sugars. And then when you're adding foods that have sugars in them, whether it be natural sugars or additive sugars, now you're adding pretty much 8 times the amount of sugar your body should be getting. So that's where a lot of weight gain can come from. If you can maintain it. I've also had I used to have really bad cramping, so bad that it was, I couldn't get out of bed. I'd have to take a leave, and not just a little bit of a leave, but a lot throughout the day, just to be able to stand up sometimes, because I'd get severe back pain. I've had 2 surgeries to remove 2 cysts that were, one was pretty much like a softball size, and the other one was just slightly smaller than a cantaloupe. So, it can be a painful process. And since eating properly and exercising and maintaining proper health, it's actually, I don't have horrible menstrual cramps. I don't have horrid back pain, because my gut isn't pushing on areas that I feel that are affected by that kind of disease, I guess. So it has improved immensely, for sure.
Yeah, and then also just the sort of the difference in our movement habits obviously improve that too, because you're going to have back pain if you're just sitting a lot and stuff like that. So it's sort of compounding factors, but that's really cool.
Yeah.
So as far as the mental and emotional process, we've had a few ups and downs.
Yes.
There's been a few ups and downs. So what's that been like? Because this is it's a huge undertaking, right? Changing your lifestyle in general. So how has it been sort of mentally and emotionally, and how have you managed it?
I think when we first started our first 20 weeks, I thought within the first couple months, I was like, oh, this is great. This is fine. I can do this. This is totally perfect. But then there were some things that were happening that, to my body, and that I was hesitant to tell you about, because I was like, oh God, I don't want to tell Marcus that I've got this going on. This is a big thing. Oh my God, I've got this guy that's the same age as me, and I don't want to tell him that this is happening. And I was telling it to my girlfriend, because obviously she's a friend of mine, so I can tell her everything. And she's like, you need to tell him so that he can help you, rectify what's happening, or try to help you to fix it. And I was like, but I don't want to. And, it was super embarrassing. And, and then I ended up telling you, And you were like, no need to be embarrassed. It happens. And, you know, instead of saying like, you know, this is how you fix it, it's like, you know, you made me look at what emotional things are happening in your life that could correspond with this type of thing. And then by you doing that, you made me think like, okay, well, what's happening? And then, you know, there was that one point where it was like a trigger, and I was like, holy crap, like am I that unhappy right now? And then I had a breakdown of just like started thinking about everything, whether it was my past, the present, or what I'm thinking about in the future. And, you know, thinking about the emotional abuse that I went through as a child, and the consistent teasing of being an overweight kid as a teenager. And girls can be really cruel in school. And, you know, all of that started flooding back. And, you know, but the one good thing was like, you were definitely there to help me through that. And also, you know, make me realize that as you lose fat releases toxins, and toxins release, you know, have to come up and they have to go out somewhere. So the best way to do that is just to let it out no matter what. And, you know, that day that I had a breakdown, I nearly cried for 4 hours and I threw up because I was so hysterical. But after the end of it, I thought, sitting on my floor, oh God, like I'm going to die here. This is the end. But then after it was all said and done, I could not have felt more liberated and freed from so much anger and hostility that I was holding on to from everything that happened in my childhood and my teenage years, or even my early adulthood. And, you know, but then realizing like, okay, Jenn, like this could happen again, but like learn, let go, and move on. And so once I started realizing that when those emotional things came up, I could talk to somebody. And so I have a therapist that I speak to that I can, you know, be like, this is what's happening. And it's not, and in a therapy session, it's not like, all right, but it's like somebody who's, unbiased to the situation, and they're helping you realize what may be the trigger of something that could be happening, that making you feel this way. So now I'm more self-aware of the emotional aspect of everything, and knowing that like I'm doing this for me and nobody else, where I think before I was always doing it for somebody else or for something else. Like, oh, if I'm skinnier, I'll get a date. Or if I'm thinner, men will be more attracted to me. And it's like, I was doing it all wrong from the beginning. It's like, no, I have to do this because I want to be healthier. I want to live a better lifestyle. And I believe too, like in my, one of your initial questions in the first part of the program when you first started with me was, who are you doing this for? Your significant other, your husband, your wife? Are you doing this for somebody? Are you doing this for whatever? And I just remember looking at that question, and right away I knew the answer. It's like, no, I want to do this for me so that later on, if I choose to have children, I have a healthy pregnancy and I bring that child into a healthy world, and my body isn't affected by everything that comes with being pregnant and that kind of thing, but also so that I can be active with my children and not have them suffer because of my unhappiness. So, you know, just getting control of the emotional aspect, that this is for me and nobody else, because before I was doing it for everyone else and I was getting nowhere. And so at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for you and care about only yourself, because that's what's most important. And in this whole weight loss thing, you know, I've had that whole emotional sadness and anger. And then, you know, I've had times where you've told me things and I'm like, screw you, Marcus, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, why do you have to say this kind of stuff to me? And it's just like point blank. But then at the same time, I'm like, well, I can't get mad at him because, like, you know, he's here to help me.
Yeah. And maybe some of it was true.
Like true. And you just have someone like pretty much slapping you in the face and you're like, right, okay, fine.
Well, no, I'm happy you shared that, because that, you know, who would have thought that you do a nutrition program and, you know, you're however long you were into it, and all of this anger is coming up because you're just not allowed, or you're not necessarily not allowed, but you choose not to eat some of the foods that you would normally eat, and food becomes sort of you know, a medicinal thing at that point, right? It's like, yeah. Or you can self-medicate with it. So by not doing that, by choosing to push through and feel whatever's coming up, you felt all these crazy emotions just from changing your eating style, right?
Yeah. And before, where I was using food as a comfort, and realizing that no, food is not a comfort food to make you feel better because you're upset. Food is there to supply your body with nutrition, not to fulfill you with because you're not gaining anything from it other than fat.
Well, yeah. And it's like, sometimes it's totally cool to eat for comfort, but when you run into issues is when you do it on a consistent basis, right? When it's like, okay, now I'm using food to avoid, I feel bored right now and I'm just going to eat, or I feel anger right now, or I feel sad, or whatever, right?
Yeah. And that's a big thing too. I was eating a lot because I was bored, or because of whatever, because I was mad, and I was like, whatever, I'm going to go eat some French fries. And it's just, now it's like, no. You actually have to face your issues and deal with them, and not feed them with food, but feed them with your own ability to deal with it. So I can't hide behind food anymore. I'm having to physically deal with these things on my own. So cool. I'm learning a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's funny too I've gone through this process myself. So it's funny to sort of listen to the voices in your own head be like, fuck this, I can eat what I want. And all these different sort of voices pulling you in different directions, where it's you gotta kind of center yourself and be like, wait, what do I want here? Who's in control and who's sort of running the show? Where did that voice come from? What's going on here under the surface of it's just about food, because it's so not. Food is a symptom, right?
Yeah.
So as far as this takes time, right? This process takes time. How have you managed the patience piece? Because it's easy to get impatient and want to be where, you want to go today. But it obviously takes time. So how have you managed patience?
Just realizing that everything is a commitment and that it doesn't happen overnight. For the first 20 weeks that we were starting our program, you'd say, our side shot came down a lot. And I'm like, okay. I don't feel that, all right. And then, or our back side came down quite a bit this week. That's great. Or you lost 4 pounds this week. And I'm like, yeah, sure, but I don't see it. And, you get blinded to that. But I mean, you're the professional, so I'm going to trust you. And I know I've said that many times, you're the professional, I'll trust you. But I think, I was like, and I think that's what was my frustration of not being patient before, is that I was not seeing, I think a lot of times, you don't see results right away, so then you give up. And I always tell people, because of the industry that I'm in, and I'm also a skin therapist on the side. And, I always told people, your skin issues or things don't happen overnight. You have to be committed, and you have to work at it, and eventually it'll get better. But you have to realize too that, your skin, everything has a cycle, and it has to take time to adjust to what you're doing. And so you just have to be patient. Nothing happens overnight. But then not listening to my own words. So finally I was like, this isn't going to happen overnight, Jen. So it took you 5 years to gain 50 pounds back. It's not going to take you 5 days to lose 50 pounds again. So It was kind of okay, so 5 years, 50 pounds, that's almost 10 pounds a year that I gained. And so I just had to realize that this was going to take time, but I also had to be patient with your learning about a lifestyle that needs to change in order to better yourself for your future, and not just, I'm losing this weight, get it off, and then I'll be fine. And then I can go back to my old ways. So I had to be patient with myself, knowing that this process will work. And it wasn't until I literally put, I think it was my 12-week mark, I put my first photo, and then I put the 12-week photo next to it. And I was like, holy crap. Oh my God. Yeah, he was right. It is coming down. It is a difference. Wow. And then I think that was the first time that I ended up posting on social media, the process, because I was so proud of myself at the time, and so proud that I was patient, and that, I trusted somebody to know that, like, yes, we are getting somewhere. Whereas before I probably just would have given up already and been like, no, it's not working. Let's try something new, rather than giving it a chance to show me that it is working. So yeah, I've definitely learned patience is a virtue in this aspect of my life right now.
Yeah, and sometimes it's tough because you're seeing yourself on an everyday basis. You look, we all kind of look in the mirror probably every day, and it's difficult to see the real changes that are taking place over weeks and months because you see yourself every day. So it's not like, but when you have the picture, the before and after, you're like, holy shit, that is, there's a difference, right? Yeah. But it's really hard to be objective with yourself, throughout the process, because there's so many things going on in your own head as it is. And you're like, it's a difficult process to begin with. So that's really cool that you had that, compared the first pick and the 12th, and you're like, oh shit, this is working.
Yeah. Like, oh, I'm only 12 weeks and I can see a difference. It's so cool.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So have your goals shifted throughout the process? Like maybe initially you're like, man, I want to lose 75 pounds, and you're down 50 now and you're like, oh, I don't actually know if I have that much to lose, or you want to lose more, or maybe different aspects of your health are becoming more important than other ones that were important to begin with when we started. Like, how have your goals sort of ebbed and flowed?
Initially I think it was like, I need to lose this weight and I want to look like the person I know I am when I see myself in the mirror. So losing that weight's important. Losing weight is still important, and I still, yes, have weight to lose. And, when I signed up for an additional 20 weeks, you had said, it's going to be a lot harder this time around. It's just not going to come off easy like it did before. And you're going to have to work a little harder. And I was like, challenge accepted, but not knowing exactly how hard it was actually going to be. And I've not necessarily lost a lot of weight this time around, but I've maintained it and fluctuated maybe a pound here, a pound there. But right now too, I can continually have you in my life if I want, but I think right now what I'm trying to do is basically figure out my goal of, okay, so once I don't have Marcus anymore, what am I going to do? And how am I going to know what to do without having him there to help me? And so now it's more or less a goal of maintaining my lifestyle and pretending on a daily basis that I actually don't have you, and have that and be like, okay, so what have you learned in the first 20 weeks? All right. So if I go to eat out a meal, I'm very choosy about what I pick and what I put on the side and what I add and what I don't add to my meals. And if I'm cooking, always remembering the measurements of everything that I need to eat is always in the back of my mind. But just knowing I can't have you for the rest of my life. I mean, I could, but at the end of the day, I have to make sure that I know what I'm doing, because I'm the one that has to continue it for the rest of my life. So my goal right now is, yes, still to lose, an extra bit of weight, but to also maintain my lifestyle so that I can lose that extra bit of weight, whether it be on my own or with you again, but just also take what I've been learning from you and implementing that into my life now, so that when you're not there anymore, that I can still do. So it's more my goal of learning on how I can function on my own, and how to learn how to break down a recipe is now, that's the goal. So right now, those are my big things right now.
That's really cool. And I mean, touching on what Jenn said about it being tougher in the second 20 weeks than the first 20 weeks. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have experienced that initially losing weight, if you have a lot to lose or you even have a moderate amount to lose, is much easier. It comes off easier at the beginning than it does later on, because, a 300-pound person that's at 25% body fat is going to lose much quicker than somebody who is 150 pounds at 15% body fat, right? So the leaner and leaner you get, the slower the weight comes off, because it's all relative. It's all relative. So understanding that is really, really important, that, it's not just going to be 4 or 5 pound losses a week right up into your goal, right? That's really helpful for people to know, because it's just not. It's not. It's all relative to the total amount that you need to lose.
Yeah.
And as far as like, if you were going to leave folks with somebody, as we kind of wrap up here, if you were going to leave folks with something that are maybe on the fence about changing their lifestyle, or maybe think it's actually not possible for them to lose weight or get where they want to go, like, is there any sort of parting thoughts that you'd leave the listeners with, that maybe you were at one point were like, man, I don't know if I'll ever lose this weight? Like, what would you tell that person?
I would just, it's about what do you want, and anything is possible if you want to work for it. And, I always thought my whole life growing up that I'm just going to be overweight. That's just the way it's going to be my whole life. It is what it is, but no, it's not. It isn't what it is. It is what you make it. So, whether or not you want to take that into your own hands and stop listening to what society has to say and what you deem as acceptable, but do what's best for you, I think that's where you come out on top. So anything is possible if you want to do it. And I know once I posted after our first 20 weeks, I posted my before and after picture. And, a lot of people were texting me after saying, like, how are you doing this when you work in the film industry? And it's like, because I don't have a choice. I just have to do it. And if I don't do it, I'm never going to do it. And I can't let my job dictate what my life is going to be like. And it was a matter of, taking that under my own, just taking that and me running with it and deciding that, no, my life is what's important. Nobody cares about me except for me. At the end of the day, no one cares about what you're doing or where you're going or how things are. The only person that cares about you is yourself. So if you don't care about yourself and where you need to be, then why should anybody else? And I think you can do it. And, a lot of people said, how do you do it in the film industry? Well, I just do it. I don't have a choice. I do have a choice, but my choice is that I want to better my life. And, our industry is full of crap, as in food, that's ready for us all the time. And, on a daily basis, I continually hear people like, why can't we have healthier options? Why can't there be things that are better for us? And there can be, but in order for that to happen, you have to do it yourself, because nobody can cater to one person and their needs. They have to cater to many people and their needs, and everybody's different. So if you want to be the person who eats healthier, then you need to bring those things to work, and you need to allow yourself to want to do that. And it is possible. I mean, it always took me a long time to do things, but once I'm committed, I'm committed. I'm like, no, I'm doing it. And nothing's going to get in my way of doing it. And nothing no one said, or nothing that anybody says is going to change that. And so it's just, you can do it. You just have to do it. But I also tell everyone that asks how you did it, I said, you actually have to be mentally ready. Because, like I said at the beginning of this, is that when I first contacted you, I thought I was ready, but then I wasn't. And then this time it was like, no, I'm ready. And it happened so fast within 24 hours. And then here we are 8 months later and 50 pounds down. So, do it when you're ready. And I always tell people, don't be like, oh, I'm going to start on Monday. Well, why not? Why today's Wednesday? Start today. I started on a Thursday. There's no specific day. And if you keep saying, oh, I'll do it this day, and you give yourself a timeline, I just don't think those are maintainable. You just have to know that eventually it'll happen, but you have to want to do it. So you just got to do it.
Cool. Yeah. I think there's actually a book called Fat Loss Happens on Monday. I'm pretty sure there's because everybody and their mom starts a diet on a Monday, right? It's always no, can't start. It's the weekend. It's the weekend coming up. Tuesday happens. It's I got another 6 days. It's
you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing it off. You're like, no, today has to be the day.
Yeah, no, totally. I will second that being mentally ready piece, because you got to be ready for a shift like this. And If you're not, that is totally okay. It's okay. It's really important to be honest with yourself, because if you go into something when you're actually not mentally and emotionally ready or physically ready, you're not going to get what you could or should out of any sort of endeavor that you take on. So you might lose momentum from that, because it might be like the last time that you tried, you know what I mean? And then you're like, fuck it, this shit doesn't work for me. So just be sure that you're mentally, emotionally, and physically ready to take something like this on. And then once you are, decide, and then sort of go balls deep and go for it. But I totally second that around being ready for the process like this. And then also, I know that when I was 50 pounds heavier than I am right now, I had it took me a long time. It actually took me years to adjust to my current body composition. So basically, I had a mental picture in my head of how I looked, and sometimes I would feel overweight. Maybe 2 years after I lost that weight, I would almost feel like overweight or expect to be where I was, and I would look at my body and realize that I wasn't. It actually takes time. This is my experience. It takes time for almost everything to catch up, because if you've been at a specific weight for a long period of time, once you lose that weight, it's not like everything just sort of magically changes. Your self-image changes, like all of it changes right away. It's almost like, it's tough for me to explain, but it's a weird mental process where I wasn't quite, like, my body was ahead of where I was mentally and emotionally.
Yeah, I can agree there too.
Yeah, it's sort of weird actually, but it's kind of cool at the same time.
Yeah. So
all right, Jenn has a couple awesome Instagram accounts, but one where she experiments with experiments and posts with lots of recipes. I'm going to link to her social accounts in the show notes. If you want to follow her there, I'd highly recommend you do. She puts up all sorts of recipes, taking you through the process on Instagram and her story and all that sort of stuff. And then she's also does makeup in the film industry, and then, like she said, skincare on the side. So check that out. I hope you guys got a lot out of this. I think it was super helpful to see sort of the ins and outs of how a process like this works, making a lifestyle shift, and then realizing that it's not necessarily a linear process. So there are peaks and valleys. That's perfectly normal. There are going to be times where you want to say fuck it and give up. There are times when you're just rolling and it feels easy. Totally normal. Totally to be expected. So thanks so much, guys, for listening. Thanks so much, Jenn, for coming on the podcast and sharing your experience. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we will see you on the next episode. Thanks, guys.